morning, everybody. It is Friday, October 17th, 2025. This is Borderland Talk. I'm Jim Budd. I'm your host. I am a writer and a human rights activist, immigrant rights activist, and I'm the author of Against the Wall. It's my journey from Border Patrol agent to immigrant rights activist. You can pick that up anywhere online. I also did the Audible for that. And you're going to discover why it is that all these immigration enforcement agents are so brutal and cruel. That book was written over 3.5 years ago now, or it was published over 3.5 years ago now. It will kind of open your eyes to why you're seeing the violence and stuff in your neighborhoods and the kidnappings and so forth, and why these agents are so able to violate their oath and the Constitution, because they have been doing that for decades down here on the southern border, but we're allowed to get away with it because most Americans didn't see it and didn't care about it because it was just happening down here on the southern border. But you're starting to see what immigration enforcement looks like. Quite honestly, it's not that much different from what's done down here on the border. It just looks like normal immigration enforcement to me. Today, I would like to talk mostly about this new Department of Homeland Security, that's DHS, has issued a new threat against their agents. They claim ICE, Border Patrol, and CBP, and anybody else working as ICE agents. They're claiming that the cartel is threatening their agents with bounties. There was a threat that they issued maybe a week or two ago where they said that Chief Gregory Bovino out of El Centro, who's running the raids in LA and Chicago, he's the one that likes to suit up and do all the flashy propaganda videos. He's always been that way down here on the border. That's just how he is. So it's nothing new. And I want to talk about that and talk about the Department of Homeland Security and the agencies, whether they be Border Patrol, ICE, or CBP, have a long history of putting out fake intelligence, and I guess I would say fake threats from the cartel, fake threats from anybody that they deem to be opposing them. It's kind of what you're seeing go on with this supposed Antifa issue. They create threats and they create intelligence so that Americans will feel bad for them and sympathize with them, but also they use these threats to justify their violence and their abuse. And it's worked. It's worked down here on the southern border for many generations. And now you're seeing it in your cities, and you're like, well, are these people lying? They're getting caught in lies. And it's like, yeah, they get caught in lies all the time. But the courts don't seem to care. And the government certainly doesn't care. They support this. And we're going to get in depth and talk about that. And I'm going to prove to you how they've been doing that for many, many decades. But first, I kind of want to talk about what's going on in the news. We've had another Border Patrol agent accused of sexual crimes acquitted. And this is even with videotape of him doing exactly what he was accused of. So let's break that down. I want you to remember, though, first that this happens frequently down here. Agents commit sex crimes or commit very violent crimes, even crimes that lead to people's death, and they are given very light sentences or just not charged at all. Usually they're not charged, but even when they are charged and the proof is there, even when it's on video, the courts will allow them to go free or give them very light sentences that are meaningless. If we look at one of the latest, most egregious ones, we can look at Efren Cornejo out of the Tucson sector. He was a BORTAC deputy commander, which is a high rank, and he was accused by his daughter and a stepdaughter in separate incidences and separate timelines of sexually abusing them, molesting them, and exposing himself to them over a course of 11 years. This started when both of the girls at separate times were around the age of 9 or 10, and he did this for 11 years. This was kept secret from the press and secret from Tucson citizens, because in Arizona they have a law called, or it's a rule called 123 that the Arizona Supreme Court passed, that if the victims are underage in a sex crime, then in order to protect the victims, they're not allowed to put even the casework in the database. And so this has an effect of hiding these cases that Tucson sector unfortunately has quite a reputation of, that I call the rapey sector. In this case, this happened just like a lot of the other cases that I'm going to mention real briefly, in which the jury hung on the fact that he had molested one child and then ended that relationship with that child's mother, and then got with another woman and began molesting one of her daughters. So they didn't see that as continuous for some, which is just bizarre. And so they hung up on the definition of what that was according to Arizona court rules and laws. And instead of going through another trial, he stated to the court through his attorney that he was choosing to plead guilty to one count of molestation and one count of exposing himself. And the judge decided that he would only sentence him on that, even though part of the sentencing and part of the plea agreement was that he had to admit to this crime. But he would not admit, and his attorney would not allow him to admit. And so he ended up pleading guilty, but stating that he was only pleading guilty because he was trying to save his family from more trauma. Didn't mind about the first case, but now he minds about the second case. So he pled guilty to these two charges, and then the judge sentenced him to lifetime probation. And before he was even sentenced, other judges had given him, you need to do this, you need to report here, when he had to go out of town for work, because he had already resigned the Border Patrol and been hired by one of the Border Patrol contractors. So he's back doing possibly what he was doing before. We just don't know. So he's working for one of these private security firms for the Border Patrol now because of his experience as a deputy commander in BORTAC. We don't know if he's around children. We don't know if he has alone time with unaccompanied children. We don't know any of that. And the judge had said, you did everything I asked of you, all the classes I wanted you to go to, all the, you need to report to probation, or you need to, whatever he was doing, the court was having him doing when he was told he could go out of town and when he had to be back and he had to report. He did everything he was supposed to. So he decided to give him lifetime probation. And he does not even have to register as a sex offender. So chances are he could be in your neighborhood right now, scoping out your kids. We just don't know. Another good case that represents this kind of this attitude that the courts have down here with Border Patrol agents, cops in general, but I just focus on Border Patrol because of my past experiences in the agency, is a guy by the name of Grayling Williams. He's actually out of the Campo station. This occurred during the first Trump administration. Mr. Williams was arrested for his live-in girlfriend having access to weapons, his weapons, and his ammunition. And she reportedly killed herself, though the San Diego sheriffs refused to do an autopsy. But they told the family they did an autopsy and they should go ahead and cremate her because the autopsy had been done and the medical examiner had the report. And they lied to her. No autopsy was done of this 40-something-year-old mother of two who inexplicably took a gun and shot herself. He claimed he went down to the store when this happened because they had had an argument, and then came back to find her dead. Now in California, there's two laws. You have to lock your guns up, and you also have to lock your ammunition up. Not locking up your ammunition is actually a worse crime than not locking up your gun. And if he had been convicted on that, he would have been banned from owning or possessing a firearm for 10 years. That would have ended his career in the United States Border Patrol. And Agent Grayling Williams has quite a history of domestic violence charges and stuff that always seem to get kicked out. And it's not necessarily because the allegations aren't true, it's because the allegations are being made by women who are dependent upon him to have his job. They have children, and so they are dependent upon his job. And this happens a lot, whether it's cops or not. This happens a lot in domestic violence cases. But he did have a history of that, and does. He's still an agent as far as I know. And so in this case, Mr. Williams ended up pleading to the gun charge, and the family of the victim demanded in writing that the San Diego district attorney, assistant district attorney, stick with ammunition charge. If they were going to drop any charges, they did not want them to drop the ammunition charge. They proceeded to change the assistant DA and the judge right at sentencing without notifying the family. Then they stated that everybody had agreed to a plea deal, even though the victim's family stood up and demanded they not do this. The judge still sentenced him to 6 months probation for the gun charge and dropped the ammunition charge. And so in this case, they even erased that charge off of his record. You can't find it now. And the same thing with Efren Cornejo over in Tucson. Because of that rule 123, you cannot find that case. It's like these cases don't even exist. And I watched both those sentencings when they happened. And so I know that they happened. And I documented them contemporaneously. Then we go to El Centro sector, where you have the former president of the El Centro Border Patrol Union, Michael Matsky, who I have on video, but the victim does not want it released because she fears for her life, pulling his gun out and putting it in his mouth and saying, "I want to fucking kill myself," and then turning it to the victim, his girlfriend, and saying, "And I'm going to fucking kill you." I warned the victim that he would probably be let loose on lesser charges. All these horrible, violent felonies that at the time the assistant DA was like, "Oh my God, this is terrible. We need to get this guy off, this gun out of his hand and this and that." And they let it go for 2 years. And during those 2 years, the judge would assign Agent Matsky to domestic violence training. He also was assigned to like an Alcoholic Anonymous AA class. But he did it through a military thing that was approved by the court. And they dropped all these violent felony charges against him that the judges saw the video. It was proven to them. And because he did these classes like Efren and like all these other people, they let him off with just 3 vandalism charges and a $100 fine. So Juan Prischner is the latest one. This comes out of the Times of San Diego. The San Diego Tribune also did the article as well. And he resigned before the charges were brought. What happened in this case was a volunteer, a U.S. citizen volunteer, out at the open door camps that they had during the Biden administration out in Acumba, had alleged that Border Patrol agent Juan Angel Prischker, or Juan Angel Prischker, however he chooses to pronounce that, of the Boulevard station, he had cornered this woman, according to her allegations, out there when she was trying to get some help for a migrant, and forced her to look at pictures of his genitalia. And then when she tried to leave, he forcibly kept her from leaving. And so he was charged with this. And the San Diego sheriffs, I knew about this as it was going on, San Diego sheriffs out there in Boulevard refused to press the charges for quite a while. And then it came out that actually a year prior to that, he had another allegation from a migrant who said that when he was searching her, he reached up underneath her shirt and grabbed her breast. And she filed a complaint. And she also testified in this trial, as did the U.S. citizen victim. She testified as well. But Agent Prischker was actually acquitted. And this was through a jury, but he was acquitted. Prischker's attorney had stated that the migrant was just trying to get her immigration documents and making fake allegations, which is interesting because Border Patrol agents do not give people entry into the United States. They might process somebody for asylum or something like that, but no. I mean, and if she was, then why is she years later coming to testify against the man? So that doesn't make any sense. But then he also said that the United States victim was also lying because she was just looking to get rich. Now, I will say that her attorney did file a federal claims lawsuit against the Border Patrol and demanded $6 million, which I have to admit seems like an awful lot. The charges, the judge had decided that showing his dick pics to this woman did not rise to the legal definition of obscene material, even though he did it on duty and he did it by force. But she claimed that the pictures did not, because they did not depict sexual activity, they didn't count. So it was deemed to be just not that big of a deal. And, this is even with the fact that after the alleged assault against the migrant and the alleged assault against the United States citizen, he ended up on video doing exactly what was accused by the United States citizen, and they still did not consider that to be enough.
He said, I feel like I've seen you guys before, and I was like, we've done a couple of border videos.
Or maybe he's seen my...
She's unusually hot. What kind of...
She's unusually hot, yeah.
What kind of video are you?
I'm a star.
She's a porn star, yeah.
Oh.
Holiday.
Holly Day, right? He's looking at her.
Oh, I'm not that...
Dreads, dude.
Oh, it's his penis.
Dreads? And he just showed her his... That's awesome, bro.
So you guys are good people that happen to have a lot of fun.
And you're a good man who happens to do a lot of good for this country. In exchange, we're going to give you 15 minutes camera off, all of us turning a blind eye. You know? And I want you to make these extra large shock absorbers bottom out.
I'm 400 pounds. Man.
Shouldn't be too hard then.
So mine's about 7 around. And I'm not kidding.
Wait. Did you? Can you confirm that, Holly? 7 around?
Yes, it had a tape measure around it. It's 7.
Yeah, no, okay. Danny, take a look at it. Take a look at it. Oh my God. Dude, is it huge, Doug?
But I'm fat. Though. This is me around. It's 7 around? Yeah. It is 7 around. That's a good thing. So it's like that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God.
Would you guys? I say you guys just make out, you know?
He's married.
Oh yeah, he is married. Get that. Ah!
He did exactly what the second victim accused him of. So just another Border Patrol agent, apparently falsely accused, would never do such a thing. But I do want to comment and say that the sad thing about this is Brisker, now that he resigned, he could actually reapply to the Border Patrol because they're hiring agents who have resigned or retired. So they're rehiring these agents. So now Pritzker can actually probably reapply to the Border Patrol and pick up where he left off. And they'll probably give him that $50,000 bonus to do it too at the same time. I just don't know what to do except to laugh. It just never ends with these guys. So when you see this stuff happening in your neighborhoods and stuff, and you're like, why isn't anybody holding these agents accountable? Why aren't these agents afraid of accountability? They're never held accountable. I mean, they really have to do something incredibly egregious and have so much evidence that it's overwhelming before anything ever happens to them. I mean, they have the investigators sewn up on their side. They have the courts sewn up, everybody, as much as these ICE, Border Patrol, and CBP like to claim that they're the victims and everybody's always targeting them and this and that, they get away with so much shit. It's not even funny. It's just not even funny. All right, so let's get to today's topic. Today's topic is going to be these cartel threats. I've also done a written piece for this, obviously. I'm going to attach it to this video. So the article that this podcast is going to go to is entitled The Long History of DHS, Department of Homeland Security's Fake Press Releases. and specifically concerning cartel bounties. But we'll go into some other fake press releases that they've done as well to show you that they often do this. They've been doing this for a long time. They used to do this when I was an agent too. Whenever something bad was going to come out, like we caused a pursuit that caused people to have accidents or something like that, and somebody died, and it was going to have negative press, they would come out with, Border Patrol agents' lives are in danger kind of bullshit. And those things are usually pushed out through your local sector intelligence units. And I worked at the San Diego Sector Intelligence Unit as a senior patrol agent, and this kind of stuff was extremely common. What they would do is the same thing that they do today is they say, oh, we have agents assigned to what they call Mexican liaison. That's what we used to call it back in the day. The Mexican liaison teams obviously need to be able to speak Spanish fluently. You need to be able to go down in Mexico and work with the Mexican intelligence officials. And so the claims that they have intelligence are usually brought to them through the Mexican intelligence and through the liaisons. I've written about this in the past and how they do this. A very good example of this is a post that I linked into this article of how Border Patrol uses Allie Bradley of News Nation to put out these fake cartel threats. And so in this case, there was video that the Border Patrol was unaware of was coming out. It came out on X or Twitter without their knowledge, and they were behind the ball in this. And I had said at the time, you just watch. You just watch. They're going to come out and say, they'll either say there was a shooting in that area, and so agents are very, wary and scared to be that close to the border wall or this or that, or they'll say, because this happened, the cartel is now threatening us. And that's so you don't think about what you just saw. What you saw was the Border Patrol intentionally running over a man. We don't know the name of this agent. I doubt this agent even filed a report until this video came out. And we've never heard the results of this. But within days, immediately, Allie Bradley comes out, News Nation, and she's a real darling of the Border Patrol. They float a lot of bullshit through her. Her and Bill Malushkin of Fox News, they float a lot of bullshit through them because they're willing to put out anything the Border Patrol tells them to put out. And then when it goes from them, then the hope is then other agencies will pick it up and it'll get more traction that way. But at the same time, honestly, they're only playing, and this is why Kristi Noem and all of them just keep lying, and everyone's like, well, everybody knows they're lying. Does everybody know they're lying? So the fact is, the majority of people who are sycophants or MAGA, they're only looking at Fox News and News Nation. I mean, like my neighbors have no idea what's going on. They have no idea that the economy's tanking. They have no idea that he's killing the dollar. And they think, because they only watch Allie Bradley's reports. And so the reports that you see coming out of Chicago from her look totally different than what you see everywhere else. And they're propagandists, and they're helping this fascist government and these fascist agents get away with what they're doing. And that's what she did in this case. So she says, oh, I was given this memorandum by top officials at the San Diego Sector Border Patrol. But yet none of these top officials would come out and say, yeah, they're targeting our agents. Because, I mean, honestly, if I was a chief, I would be like, what the fuck? These guys are targeting our agents. I've also never known the cartel to just issue death threats like that. I mean, they would just shoot the agents and be done with it, quite honestly. But if they start shooting the agents, they know they're going to pay severely for that from the U.S. government. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen. There's lots of Border Patrol agents who have lost their lives down here. And sometimes it can be cartel. There have been shootouts and stuff. But in this case, this is not what happened. And in most cases, this is not what happens. Being a Border Patrol agent is actually statistically more safe than being a police officer, because the majority of people you're arresting, 99.9% of them, are not criminals. They're looking for work or they're seeking safety. Now, she said she had this memorandum. It said, oh, it's from intelligence, but it's just a screenshot of an agent's computer. You can't even tell if it actually came from the Border Patrol or not. But it's not a memorandum. It's like a flyer put out by intelligence or warning for the agents. And so she grabs a screenshot of it, which if you see on the thing, it's still law enforcement sensitive, meaning that she shouldn't have access to it. But at any rate, she puts it out, and then it got picked up by another couple of right-wing outlets, and they went with it. And then we just never heard anything more about this man who was hit by the Border Patrol. So that's done to get your mind off of the egregious thing that you just heard that they did. And then there's this story from 2005 that I recently put out about how common false reports are. And it even shows an article from 2005 from this incident stating that false reports are common. That's the agent's defense. We commonly lie on government reports. We commonly lie on different documents that are used in court. That was their defense. So the basis of this case in 2005 was that they were on the Canadian border in Swanton sector, and these Border Patrol agents apprehended a guy with 60 pounds of weed. He came across the border as a Canadian legally, and they decided they wanted to use him as a confidential informant. Now, there's policies and rules on how you're supposed to deal with this. Number one, you have to notify your supervisor. They did not notify, according to the supervisor, they did not notify the supervisor. So they lied to their supervisors, they lied to the DEA, they lied to ICE, and they lied to CBP's investigators from their Office of Professional Responsibility, which is Internal Affairs. Not only that, but the agents also lied because on the canine narcotics apprehension reports. So one of the agents was a canine handler. Instead of what normally is done by policy is when you write the seizure for the I-44, which is the seizure for the marijuana, and that has to go to the DEA. It can also go to ICE, I think now, HSI, Homeland Securities. I'm not sure about that, but it might. And you're supposed to be honest on that and say everything on that. And if this person ends up being a confidential informant, you can redact their names for whatever reason. They decided to take the marijuana and take it to a different place than where they located this man with the marijuana and claim they found it just sitting there. And then even recorded and took pictures of their dog, the canine, hitting on the drugs as if it was an actual find by the canine. So this contaminates the canine's apprehension log. And quite honestly, the canine should have been decommissioned after that. I don't know if he or she was. I have no idea. But the defense in this case was that by policy, when we do confidential informants, this is how we do it. And we also send out fake press releases. For a while, you see that the supervisors and then the patrol agent in charge of the station in Swanton sector that was there at the time. At first, when he's interviewed, he's like, well, I didn't tell him to do that. And then the second time he's interviewed, he's like, well, yeah, I told him to do that. And so the defense is to say that this is how we're trained to handle with confidential informants. And he even said that fake press releases have to go all the way up to Washington, D.C. headquarters of the Border Patrol. And that is how that they are put out, according to this 2005 case. So he readily admits that they've done that in the past. At the same time, while these supervisors and high-ranking agents are denying that they ordered these men to lie and have done it before, they also come up with a prior incident with these same agents where they said they did the same thing. So it has happened one time before, and that shows that it is policy. And so the prosecution, the United States, which is trying to prosecute these agents for lying on government forms, says, okay, let us see the manuals and the documents that, show that y'all are instructed to lie on these forms. Even though every agent interviewed and involved in this, from ICE to Border Patrol, says, no, I have never been ordered to lie, and I would never lie on a document. They're like, oh yeah, we are ordered to lie. And we do lie on documents, even though nobody will admit to it, except these two agents that are being charged. And that ends up being their defense. And the agency ends up saying, no, we cannot give you those manuals because they are secret. and law enforcement sensitive. So you cannot have the manuals that will prove that our agents are told to lie in order to defend them. And so the U.S. attorney ends up just dropping the case because they can't do anything with it. That's another way that they apparently put out fake press releases all the time, according to this assistant chief who admitted to doing it. But this latest press release that came out from Department of Homeland Security, it came through ABC News. And I grew up with ABC News. I mean, watched it every night. It was mandatory in my house. I mean, maybe they did the same kind of shit back then, but it's just amazing, amazing to watch this. But the press release in question, the one we're talking about, was released on October 14th. And this is where Secretary Nome claimed that the Mexican cartels were offering bounties for targeting ICE agents and anybody that was working with them. You see, I'll show you the thing here. They claimed that they had spotter networks living in neighborhoods in Chicago that were assisting. They even went so far as to claim that Antifa was part of this, even with no evidence whatsoever. And they claim that now the cartel has a tiered bounty system. So they're getting, they're getting really professional, almost like a professional, I don't know, company or whatever. At first, it was $10,000 for the ordered killing of Chief Gregory Bovino. And I and other experts at the time said that's really low. That doesn't make any sense. So now they come up with this new one. So now in the tiers, you can get 2,000 if you can gather intelligence or dox agents, and that includes agents' family members. They're offering, they said, 5 to 10,000 for kidnapping or non-lethal assaults on standard ICE and CBP officers, and then up to $50,000 for the assassination of high-ranking officials. That's better, but I think it's still not high enough for a chief. You have to understand that it just is absurd. It doesn't make any sense. The cartel would then have hellfire fury rain down upon them if they did anything like this. There's no evidence of this, that this came out from Antifa or anybody else. But unfortunately, ABC News comes out with this, and it came out on ABC's nightly news. And that is extremely unusual because usually they float this stuff through these little News Nation, Allie Bradley right-wing things, and then it kind of makes its way into mainstream. This seemed to have started in mainstream. And this is because our mainstream media has just given up. I'm going to, there's a link in here that attaches to the actual video that it's introduced by ABC News anchor David Muir, who's supposed to be this, beyond reproach type of anchor. And then it was in prime time. But it was their Chief Justice Respondent, Pierre Thomas, who has quite a good reputation with ABC. His report was DHS has said, because they have no proof of what DHS is telling them. And they didn't even try and verify these claims. They didn't even say that they haven't been able to verify these claims. They just simply stated that it's what DHS and Secretary Nome claimed was happening. But then they doubled down with a written piece by Luke Barr, Barr, and the opening line stated, "There is credible intelligence that members of Mexican drug cartels have offered a tiered bounty system for hits against ICE and CBP, and Border Patrol would be included in that, according to DHS." And then they add, so this is what they say makes this credible intelligence. They add, 2 weeks ago, the Justice Department charged a member of the Chicago-based Latin Kings with putting a bounty on Chief Greg Bovino. But to sit there and say that there is credible intelligence, based off of what? You didn't show us any credible intelligence. You've only shown us saying that DHS is simply stating the only intelligence that they gave, even for the very first thing 2 weeks ago with Bovino, was a snapshot, a photo of somebody's cell phone saying yeah, I'll give you 10,000 for a high ranking. I mean, that's not enough evidence. And what we've seen over and over and over again from these agents in Chicago, in LA, are accusations that uh, there was the father that they claimed hit an agent with a car and drug him. And so agents had to shoot and kill him. Video clearly shows that's not what happened. Then there's the accusation of a woman that they shot like 6 or 7 times in Chicago. They claim that she rammed them and therefore they had to shoot her. But we have video evidence of the agent walking up to her and then shooting her. They claim that she had a gun and was threatening them. She was licensed to carry a weapon and it was still in her purse. She didn't have access to it. They didn't even know she had a weapon until it was all over and they searched her car. And then on top of it, I don't know if it's the same case or a different case. I think it might be the same case. It could be a different case. One vehicle they used to ram somebody that they claimed other people were ramming them has been driven all the way back to Maine from Chicago. And the judge is having to order the vehicle back because it's evidence. Now, this is normal behavior in these agencies, hiding the evidence, lying about who the aggressor was, lying about why they had to use this use of force. This is why they have the cover-up teams that I talk so much about on this podcast and I write so much about on Substack and Ghost. So this is normal shit. These supposed seasoned ABC News veterans David Muir, Pierre Thomas, and Luke Barr should not be reporting things like this. They could report it as DHS is now accusing and saying this and this and this, but there's been no proof. So just like Ali Bradley's claims that cartel threats, it feels like there's no evidence. There's no there. It's just them saying it has happened. So do immigration enforcement agencies just absolutely make up intelligence? Yes, and I can prove it. You can ask my good friend, Pastor Kaji Duja. She sued the Border Patrol back in 2018 when agents accused her of performing weddings in Mexico with the intent to provide migrants with the means to commit marriage fraud in order to gain access to the United States. This was during the first Trump administration. And it didn't really make sense when I met with Pastor Duja to talk about this case and advise her on it. I said, were you marrying people to American citizens? And she said, no, I was marrying Hondurans and maybe Guatemalans to Mexicans and this and that, which seemed kind of strange. You know, it didn't matter that these marriages were being performed in Tijuana, Mexico, to couples that weren't U.S. citizens. The Border Patrol was still going to go after this. And they claimed that the way they got that intelligence was that a migrant had crossed illegally and offered the intelligence to them. This was the Imperial Beach Station, offered the intelligence to them that this pastor was committing these acts. And then they decided to take away her global entry pass and punish her that way. And she took them to court for unlawfully targeting her. And it wasn't until March of 2023 that she finally won her case because CBP was forced to disclose internal emails that showed that high-ranking CBP officials had used the intelligence that was developed by Border Patrol to target her and others. And in fact, San Diego's own CBP branch chief, Saro Oliveri, admitted in court that the intelligence was completely made up. The message was sent in December 2018, the month after the large group from Central America had arrived in Tijuana. The email authored by Saro Oliveri listed 24 people, including 14 U.S. citizens, whom he accused of being, quote, organizers or instigators of the so-called caravan. It was written in Spanish, and the email asked the Mexican immigration officials to detain those people because CBP wanted to interview them and, quote, there exists a great possibility that they do not have adequate documentation to be in Mexico, unquote. So they'll fuck with you even if you're in Mexico, just so you know. In 2022, during the court trial, the branch chief testified in court that he made up the inadequate documentation claim without any basis. Quote, and he testified and said this, quote, literally creative writing. Do the immigration enforcement agencies just make up intelligence and put it out there? Yeah. And you don't even have to take it from me. You can take it from Mike Vigil, a former DEA official, who stated to the Latin Times that this latest threat from Mexican cartels to kill or dox ICE agents, Border Patrol agents, and CBP, he stated, the statement is not true. It is absolutely absurd because neither ICE nor CBP are threats to cartel, and if they took action against them, they would be in trouble. It's absurd that cartels are focusing on them because many agencies in the U.S., including the DEA, are only focused on migrants. He's not wrong about this. ICE, Border Patrol, and CBP are not focusing on narcotic seizures at the moment. Yes, they are getting lots of narcotic seizures at the ports of entry. They are always getting large seizures of narcotics at the ports of entry because that is where the majority of them cross. But we got to remember that at the same time, Trump ordered all federal agents to stop working on narcotics cases, kidnappings, bank robberies, and everything else, and only focus on getting as many immigrants off the street as they could find. The number of drug cases, according to this report, has actually dropped 10% in United States courts, and that is the lowest it's been in decades. At the same time, it's easier to cross people and narcotics right now illegally in between the ports because there are inexperienced military out there doing what the Border Patrol is supposed to be down here doing. And if you think that the cartel is actually mad about ICE and other agents mass deporting immigrants, you do not understand how this works and how smuggling, human smuggling works. So for the cartel, this is just another money-making scam. They're going to make so much money off of this because most of the people being arrested and deported right now have no criminal convictions. They have many years here in the United States. They have families. They have worked here for companies for decades, and some of them even have businesses here in the United States. So once you deport somebody like that, somebody who's not just immediately come across the border, and then you grab them as they're coming across illegally, and you know that they've done that, but you're going to Chicago, you're going to LA, you're going wherever to these other cities, you're going to find people who have been here for a very long time. Their children are probably United States citizens. So once deported, they're not going to stay where you put them. They're going to attempt to come back and find their families, and that will be any way they possibly have to do it. It is creating more business for the cartel, like all of our immigration policies have for the last 30 years. And we have already seen people coming back who were deported during this mass deportation. There is documentation of this happening as far back as March, when the mass deportations were just getting started. So as they deport people, they are coming back. And while the Border Patrol has stopped counting the, quote, gotaways since Trump took office, I can attest to you as a former agent that there are always gotaways. This nonsense that there are not any gotaways is bullshit. There are always gotaways. The agency stops reporting that statistic because they want to show that Trump is doing a great job on the border. So they just have stopped reporting it, even though during the last administration, they reported it breathlessly every single day on X. At the same time, Border Patrol checkpoints, I'm getting news from my people in Arizona and also in California that and I've seen in California that a lot of the checkpoints are down. Sometimes they're up, but they are more often down. And you cannot know what your gotaways are if you're not having your checkpoints up and apprehending people. You're not going to be able to apprehend narcotics that get around the agents at the ports of entry if your checkpoints are not up. The fact of the matter is when you send, half of your southern border agents, I don't know how many they're sending, let's say 30%, 50%, whatever it is. You send those agents into the cities to go play ICE, you can't staff your checkpoints. You can't do it. And that's what's happening down here. And the military is not going to run those checkpoints. They can't run those checkpoints. So you can't count your gotaways if there are no agents to do the counting. See how that works? But even Mexico's president, Claudia Sheinbaum, stated that the Mexican intelligence had no idea what NOM is talking about or DHS is talking about. According to her, there is no cartel bounty out on federal agents, and DHS refuses to respond to her and her country's inquiries for the evidence and information about these allegations. I hate to say it, like I said, I grew up with ABC News, and I hate to see this happening, but the fact of the matter is they haven't given any proof that any of this has happened. And so once again, I have to call bullshit on this. I just don't see it happening. If the cartel wanted to shoot Border Patrol agents, they could shoot Border Patrol agents. They sit on X's or stationary positions down here. And yet every time they do this, we don't see anything. The sad thing is that when you do actually get hurt as an agent or you need to use of force, because there are incidences where you're out in the middle of nowhere. And there are sometimes bad people that are coming across with these groups, sometimes, very rarely. The problem is then people don't believe you because the agencies lie so much. We have seen this over and over and over again. Think about in the first Trump administration, they lied and said they weren't targeting Muslims, and then they were. They lied and said they weren't separating children. And then we found out they've been separating children for a whole year before they even admitted they were separating children. They just lie and lie and lie. And they'll put it out on press releases. They consider this just to be propaganda and the thing they have to do to get you all to see that they're the real victims. And they're just trying to save you all from criminal migrants. And the sad thing is, it doesn't slow down the fentanyl coming across. It doesn't prevent migrants from losing their lives down here. It's not going to keep Americans any safer what they're doing. What they're doing is actually making us less safe. I don't know what it's going to take for the mainstream media to stop doing this. I just see them getting worse and worse. Watching ABC do this is really devastating to me. I think it's just another thing I grew up with my childhood, and now I realize it's just been lies. One of the reasons I come to the conclusion that one of the reasons why they got away with the invasion narrative that wasn't true at all, and one of the reasons why like mainstream media won't tell the truth and say that it was Trump's policies that caused this ridiculous so-called invasion, and that a lot of the people that were counted as individual crossings crossed 30, 40 times. Were counted 30, 40 times. Lots of people, thousands of people, probably hundreds of thousands of people caught multiple times to make the numbers double, triple, quadruple. I don't know what it's going to take for them to do that, but for them to come forward. But for them to come forward, you have to understand then that they have to admit to you that they've been lying to you for all these years about how dangerous the southern border is, about that fentanyl's coming in between the ports of entry, which is not. The fact that they don't check more than like 5% of the cargo containers coming into the United States. If you're a drug dealer, where are you going to put your drugs then? You're going to go bribe a CBP agent and send them through legally. It's like the media just has this never-ending willingness to forget the past, to not look at the recent past of why this probably isn't true, and the fact that this agency is so corrupt and brutal. They just don't want to connect those dots for you all. And that's what I've been doing, is connecting the dots. Let's look at the history. Let's look at before 9/11. Let's look at after 9/11 and all this other stuff. There's plenty of documentation to show that DHS, CBP, Border Patrol, and ICE routinely put out fake press releases, that they have routinely put out fake cartel warnings, that cartel bounties against agents, and also that they have testified in court that they are trained to lie on court documents and on professional documents and press releases, that they are trained to do that, and that they send it through Washington, D.C. headquarters in order to do it. I don't think we should keep allowing these agents to get away with stuff. I would like to see our states and our cities, our mayors and our governors start demanding that these agents be charged with state crimes, because they are committing state crimes. Your states and your county and your cities have the legal authority to investigate all these use of force violations. When they shoot a minister in the head for praying on the street, those agents could be charged locally. They could be charged by sheriffs. They could be charged by state officials for violating state law. But nobody seems to have the strength or the will to do that. And so I think things are just going to keep getting worse. And then when you see that somebody like ABC News, David Muir, Pierre Thomas are so willing to just say, DHS said this. Well, DHS has also said that they weren't separating children, that they didn't have a policy to separate children. DHS has also said that they had no idea that January 6th was going to happen. The mainstream media is not willing to admit that our law enforcement agencies, especially since 9/11, have been infiltrated by white supremacist groups. You could clearly see that from January 6th. Clearly see that in the way that the Capitol Police did not have the gear that they needed because their management was in on it. And as soon as that happened, and I think everybody's kind of forgotten, the head of the Capitol Police resigned and then turned around and wrote a book blaming it all on Democrats. I'm not saying, everybody gets on me because I jump on Democrats for the shit that they do down here on the border as well, and their brutality and their cruelty as well. Because I both sides this. And of course, right now we're in deep doo-doo and everyone's like, we just need to be all behind the Democrats. And I understand why you do that. But if we do that, and number one, I agree, if we get another chance to vote, we have to vote these people out. But two, we have to have accountability. Part of the reason why we're in the situation that we're in is because there's never any accountability down here, as I've discussed in this. But at the same time, you look nationally, look at the Biden administration, there was no accountability for the January 6th insurrection in as far as the leaders, no accountability from CBP. Chief of Border Patrol at the time was Rodney Scott. He had men just down the block, over 50 men suited up, ready to go in riot gear, never responded. Said he didn't get a phone call. And now he's head of CBP. They're just not willing to admit this. What you're seeing now is these immigration enforcement agencies, the mass deportation, is an excuse to bring in the police state. They've already arrested, I think, 170 Americans in this mass deportation. A lot of these people that they're arresting, they accuse them of stuff and then they just set them free with no charges. And the media is not following up on this. We need to demand that, and I don't know how we do it because they're all bought out. Just stop watching them, I guess. Boycott the people or the companies that are supporting ABC News, News Nation, Fox News, all these people. I don't know what to do about this other than bringing back the fairness doctrine, but that's not going to happen with these people. If you don't know, the fairness doctrine was taken out, I think, in the 1980s. It required that if you owned a television station or radio station, you couldn't own too many of them because we wanted to have a difference of opinions. And now you have these big monopolies owning, all this streaming and all this other stuff. And at the same time, the fairness doctrine required that if you're ABC News and you're going to talk about something that the Trump administration is doing, you also have to bring on the other side and say what they're doing. It's not required anymore. That's how you got these organizations, these news organizations. They call themselves entertainment organizations that spout this nonsense and have, unfortunately, very ignorant people believing everything that they're saying. This comes back to Fox News, the whole Dominion voting, where they had to pay all that money and they admitted they were lying because they just wanted to make money. It's more than just wanting to make money. They wanted Donald Trump in there. And that's what you saw. They did the same thing with the border and the invasion, but unfortunately, the mainstream media doesn't put people down here. So they don't really know what's going on down here. They just follow what Fox News tells them to do, and they just regurgitate what they are saying. But these organizations like Fox News and stuff, it's more than just lying about the election, Dominion voting, and causing an insurrection. They lied about the invasion and what caused that invasion, and that helped Trump win, quite honestly. And at the same time, they're lying about what's going on in ICE. Like I said, you look at the reporting that you see coming out from Ali Bradley and Bill Malushkin in particular. Looks different than everything that you're seeing come from people who are actually there in the streets. And they ride around with them. They literally ride around with Border Patrol and ICE to get the best pictures. So they're literally part of their camera crews. The best thing that we can do right now is film the truth so that we can prove that they're lying and just keep putting it out on social media and do the best to check your resource and think about this next time when you see DHS and stuff coming out with this stuff and question this, because everything that seems to be coming out of their mouths is a bunch of lies.